So, just a look at the temple over here. You can stand in the front.
Oh, thank you.
I've seen the model
Yeah, little
You're talking about that one section right there? Is that what you were talking about? This,
The temple,
that
you mean?
wall? No, the wall you were talking about?
Yeah, the wall is that one over there.
Oh, from there to here?
Again, the outer wall to the right was not there at the time of Jesus.
Okay.
The outer wall at the time of Jesus was the one that goes out of that fortress. And
Okay,
then goes
that-
and doing that
Oh, huge area then.
huge area, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought you were
Okay,
talking about the
so
little bit there.
we're now looking at the model from which angle, which direction? East. Exactly. In reality, we would be standing on the Mount of Olives. This is where the Mount of Olives is situated in relation to the city. And remember that because tomorrow morning, Lord willing, we'll be standing on top of the Mount of Olives. Okay? We're going to look at the modern city, the old city and everything. But this is more or less where the Mount of Olives is situated. And between here and the model, you see there's a valley just below the railing, down the bottom there. This is the Kidron, where the Kidron Valley is at, one of the three valleys in Old Jerusalem. Now, back to the temple. The first thing that you notice is that the second temple was built over a platform, okay? Initially, it was a hill, a natural-looking hill called the Hill of Moriah, and Judaism associates that with the binding of Isaac. They believe that right where the temples were later built, this is where the binding of Isaac took place. And later, by the time of Herod decided to renovate the Nehemiah temple, the second temple, by adding these massive retaining walls. And so you see the eastern retaining wall on this side over here, but there was, of course, also the northern retaining wall to the right and the southern retaining wall with a terracotta rooftop to the south, and then the western wall, which would be behind the white building in the center, which was called the Holy. And so back in the day, everybody knew, whether he was a Gentile or a Jew, man or female, an ordinary Jew or a priest or a Levite, how far they could go inside the temple compound. Everyone, both Jews and Gentiles, could go to the court, okay, that outer court of the temple compound. Okay, you see that big plaza there surrounding the sanctuary. Gentiles could only go so far. You see that fence surrounding the sanctuary. And by the way, the name of that court, outer court, was called the Court of the Gentiles because of that. Jewish women could go as far as the Court of the Women, which was the first court there inside the sanctuary. Jewish men could just go a little further beyond into the Court of Israel. Levites and priests could reach the court inside, okay, which was basically where the offering of the sacrifices took place. And only priests could enter the white building in the center into the chamber that was called Holy, okay? And by the way, it was so holy that as soon as they completed the duty which they performed, they had to leave the place immediately, okay? So it wasn't a kind of a priestly social club, you know? It was the house of God, and everybody took it so seriously, right? As soon as they filled up whatever pitcher or, you know, oil lamp or whatever needed to be done, showbread and so on and so forth, they had to leave the room immediately. The holiest spot on top there was called the Holy of Holies. And that was the back side of that tall building in the center. It was separated by a very thick and tall veil. In fact, according to the Jewish sources, it was 4 fingers thick. Okay? Imagine, 4 fingers thick. It was massive. Okay? And only one individual, once every year on the Day of Atonement, was permitted into that chamber, the high priest. But even for the high priest, it was a very risky ordeal. We know, based on Jewish traditions and sources, that the high priest had a kind of a special belt, a very long one, with bells that were attached to it. And as long as he was alive and performing his duties, they could hear the bells ringing. If they couldn't hear the bells ringing all of a sudden, they knew that something terribly wrong happened there. And since they couldn't go in there to help him, the only other option was to pull his body out. Okay? So this really goes to show how holy the Holy of Holies really was. It's very difficult for us to understand that simply because we live in a new era, right? And you remember what happened when Jesus died on the cross? The veil tore. Okay, this is huge upgrade.
Right.
You know, a lot of times we don't appreciate that. But we really need to remember, you know, how serious the whole business is and how holy God is, right?
So big and monsters too, like 60 to 30 to 4.
That's right. Yeah. And so that is the little something about the different sections of the temple. Over to the left was the royal stoa. You see that terracotta along the rooftop. Excuse me for a second. עמית, יש אישור רק לי ולך להגיע ב-4 למלון. ויאלה, בסדר? רק אל תגיד לאף אחד אחר בסדר. כן, הר הצופים ואז ישר המלון. Yeah. I told him what this model was all about. Okay, so over to the left, the royal stoa. You remember the time during the Passion Week of Jesus in Jerusalem when he goes up to the temple and he sees all the vendors and everything and he turns over the tables? It was most likely right there. Okay, so that was the entrance to the temple compound. And then over to the right, you see another structure, a fortress with 4 towers. This is where we believe Pontius Pilate sentenced Jesus to death. Okay, it was called the Antonia Fortress, named after Mark Antony. And this is also the fortress into which the Roman soldiers brought Paul initially, rescuing him from the crowds. But you remember that even there, it wasn't really safe for him, and that's why they decided to move him over to Caesarea by the sea. Okay, let's move on.